What up, guys? This is
Cheevo, guys!
Back here again with another video. Today we're going to be talking about 10 things that I wish Xbox would announce at E3 2021. Now, obviously everybody's opinion is different, so this list is subjective. It is influenced by my personal feelings, tastes, and opinions. Now, first thing you're going to notice is this isn't your average Xbox list that you see in other YouTube videos. I've dug real deep to find the old school Xbox exclusive games so that we can bring back and remaster some Xbox classics. Now, before we get started, I want to point out that I use a randomizer on this list because it was too hard to prioritize them in order. So these are randomized. However, these are the 10 things that I really wish Xbox would announce at E3 2021. And this isn't going to include Halo, Fable, Avowed, Perfect Dark, nor Everwild. Nothing that's been announced yet. These are all things that I wish would get announced. Starting off with the legendary Banjo Kazooie. I know I told you guys I was going to use a randomizer for this list, but you already know I had to put Banjo at the front of it. For those of you that don't know, Banjo Kazooie is by far one of my favorite games of all time. It's easily my favorite Nintendo 64 game. Banjo Kazooie and Banjo Tooie were a huge part of my childhood. It's actually one of the main reasons I became an Xbox fan in the first place, is because Microsoft had purchased Rare, and I knew that all of the Rare games were going to end up on Xbox. So like a lot of people, I got the Xbox hoping that I would see the next Banjo Kazooie game and Conker game on the Xbox. Now, in terms of new games, we never really got any. We only ended up getting one new Banjo game, that was Banjo Kazooie Nuts and Bolts on the Xbox 360, and we ended up getting the Conker Bad Fur Day remake on the original Xbox. Other than that, the licenses for these IPs have pretty much just been sitting there. Trust me, I could rant about Banjo Kazooie this whole video. Microsoft pretty much alley-ooped themselves when they added Banjo Kazooie to Smash Bros on the Nintendo Switch. They definitely should have announced a new Banjo Kazooie at that moment, but we all know they did not. So my number one wish for Xbox at E3 is to bring back Banjo Kazooie. The next one, I'm really glad that the randomizer put it in the top 5 because I think this one is super important and it's highly anticipated, and that is the return of Sam Fisher, aka the Splinter Cell games. Now, my recommendation to Phil isn't necessarily to go purchase all of Ubisoft, but if you can get the next Splinter Cell game to be an Xbox exclusive, then you can really start getting some momentum going for Xbox. And trust me guys, this isn't too out there. We've seen a Splinter Cell be a console exclusive before, as Microsoft had paid to make Splinter Cell Conviction an Xbox exclusive back in the Xbox 360 days. So the return of Sam Fisher on Xbox is highly recommended. And next on the list, we're going to be talking about Ryse. Ryse is by far my favorite Xbox exclusive on the Xbox One. Sadly enough, it was a launch title, and I thought it was just the beginning in terms of brand new Xbox exclusives. But little did I know, I would go a whole console generation without finding a game that I loved just as much as Ryse. The game includes a single-player campaign, as well as a few multiplayer modes. If you haven't had a chance to try out Ryse yet, I highly recommend doing so if you have Xbox Game Pass or Game Pass Ultimate, because it is included. Now, there's only one caveat, and that is the fact that this game is developed by Crytek and it is published by Microsoft. So in order for there to be a Ryse 2, Microsoft would have to cut a deal with Crytek for them to come back and develop the second game. Because as you can all imagine, if you want the game to be as great as the first one, you definitely want to get Crytek to come back and develop the second one. So my third wish is not necessarily to purchase or acquire Crytek, although that would be really cool, but just to cut a deal so that at least we can get Ryse 2 on next-gen consoles. On to the next one. My next recommendation would be to add bikes to Forza. I really think it's about time that they introduce motorcycles into the Forza franchise. Now, Xbox did announce Forza Motorsport, which appears to be either a reboot or a live service version of Forza that will, just get updated over time. But I don't know, my gut feeling is that they release Forza Horizon 5 before they actually release this next installment in the Forza Motorsport series. Who knows, either way, they're probably a year apart from releasing from each other. I just hope that they add motorcycles in one of the next Forza games, preferably the next Forza Horizon game, because then you can also include off-road style dirt bikes. I really think it would be a good way to mix up the Forza series, because let's be honest, the games are near perfect and they're great every year, super consistent, but they're getting redundant. It's pretty much the same thing all the time, just in a different environment. I guess the old saying is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I do think that that is true. They shouldn't change it up at all, but they should consider adding motorcycles and dirt bikes. Next, we have add UPlay to Gamepass. Now, UPlay Plus was announced by Ubisoft last year, and it's pretty much similar to EA Play or Xbox Game Pass. It's a streaming service by Ubisoft where you can play all of their titles. The only thing was that it only released on PC. It's not available on consoles. Hopefully, they'll end up releasing it on consoles, and if they do, Xbox Game Pass should definitely collaborate with them and make sure that UPlay Plus is included with the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate membership. It was actually rumored recently that UPlay Plus is going to be coming to consoles, so if in fact that does come true, I would highly recommend to Phil Spencer and Xbox that they cut that check for Ubisoft and include UPlay Plus with the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate membership. But let's be honest, at that point, Xbox Game Pass would have so much value, they would have to increase the price, at least the price to have UPlay Plus included in your membership. Probably a $5 increase compared to the price on UPlay Plus. I think it's like $14.99 a month. Next is one I probably should have had second on my list, and that is a Conker Reboot. Conker's Bad Fur Day probably is my second favorite game on the Nintendo 64, another game developed by Rare. Xbox ended up purchasing Rare, as I mentioned earlier in the Banjo Kazooie portion of this video, and they ended up releasing a remastered version on the original Xbox of Conker's Bad Fur Day. Not only that, but it included an Xbox Live feature on the multiplayer where you could actually play the game online with friends. And that right there is the reason why I don't understand why Microsoft has let this IP sit for so long. It has so much more opportunity than Banjo Kazooie, even though I love Banjo Kazooie a lot, and that's because this game has a multiplayer mode. The game had a multiplayer mode back on the Nintendo 64, and they revamped the multiplayer on the remastered version for the original Xbox. So if I were Xbox, I'd recommend starting off with a proper remaster of this game. I know it's a second remaster, but that's where you need to start with it. I think that's pretty much the strategy at this point, based off of the way that, Crash Bandicoot went about doing things. The best way to do it is to remaster the old games, get everybody back in the loop of an old franchise, and once everybody is back and attached to a franchise, then you can go ahead and release a proper sequel, like Crash Bandicoot did with the Insane Trilogy, and then once everybody started getting into Crash again, they finally released Crash 4. I really think this is the best strategy to take for Microsoft in terms of approaching Conker and Banjo remakes, just because there's going to be people that want it to be true to the original, but there's also going to be people that want a new version of it. So you can satisfy both of those audiences by making a proper remaster of the original and then releasing a sequel to the original. Now I want to talk about the multiplayer in Conker. I think this game makes for a perfect battle royale game. If they had a 1 vs 100 game or like a 50 vs 50 all-out war in a Conker game, I think that would be really popular online for Xbox. So ultimately, my recommendation to Microsoft would be to re-release Conker, a proper remaster. Don't mess with the original game, just remaster it, 4K modern day graphics, and then after that you can go ahead and make a sequel to Conker's Bad Fur Day. Not only that, but you have to nail the multiplayer. I think there's a lot of potential with the multiplayer, again, with some sort of battle royale mode. So if you can release a proper remake or remaster with the revamped multiplayer, kind of like they modernized it back in the day with the live and reloaded version for the original Xbox, we just need to do that for modern day. If Microsoft can manage to do this, I think all of the Conker fans will be happy. Next on our list is to release a VR headset. Xbox has said that this isn't a priority to them over and over again. However, we have all seen the success that the PSVR has had. Not only that, but for me personally, there's just a lot of cool VR games that are starting to come out now that the technology, has been out for a few years and it's cheaper than it used to be. When it first came out, it was, towards $700-800 to get a headset for PC. And then PSVR came out, making VR under $500. And then finally, most recently, the Oculus Quest came out. That headset is completely wireless. You don't even need a PC for an Oculus Quest anymore. That one's only $299, same price as the PSVR. So all of a sudden, we have two high-quality VR headsets available at the $300 price point. So more families are going to be able to afford the technology. At this point, I think it's the perfect time for Xbox to jump into the VR scene. Not only that, but there would be a ton of awesome exclusives that we could make for Xbox VR. And not only the exclusives, but you could try to get access or cut deals for some of the best third-party VR games, like maybe Half-Life Alyx or the new Medal of Honor VR game. That one's developed by Respawn, the same developer of Titanfall and Apex. That one seems to be a really good VR game as well that I wish I could play, but again, don't have a VR headset. So I'm hoping that Xbox jumps on the VR train soon. Next, we have Fusion Frenzy. By far one of the best original Xbox games, and another really great IP that Microsoft owns that for some reason is stagnant. I thought we were headed in the right direction once they released Fusion Frenzy 2 on the Xbox 360, but we never got a Fusion Frenzy on the next generation, which was the Xbox One, and hopefully we'll get our next installment on the Xbox Series X this next generation. Because again, this is another really awesome IP owned by Microsoft that they just have sitting there. Online Battle Royale party games are actually really popular right now, all due to the Fall Guys craze, so I think that Xbox can really capitalize on that momentum by releasing an online party game in Fusion Frenzy 3 or maybe Fusion Frenzy Online. The question is who's going to develop it? We have a lot of developers under the Microsoft umbrella now. Let me know who you guys think should develop the next Fusion Frenzy down in the comments below. This next one might catch you guys a little off guard, but it's to re-release the Xbox 360 controller. The only reason I say this is because I think it would be cool to be able to use all of the Xbox controllers on the modern day console, the Xbox Series X. We can use all of them currently except for the Xbox 360 controller. Just because the original OG Xbox controller, the Duke, it was actually re-released by Hyperkin. If you don't have it yet, I highly recommend investing in one. It's really cool because you can play an OG Xbox game via backwards compatibility. And you know, back in the day, you had a black and a white button. And if you have that Hyperkin controller, you can play an OG Xbox game via backwards compatibility with no issues or button remapping required. And next we have Viva Piñata 3. I really think that Microsoft should be paying attention to the Animal Crossing hype because they could have had that same hype with the brand new Viva Piñata game. If they aren't already, I definitely think that Rare should be making a third game. They already released 2 games and they were released pretty close to each other. I think that's why maybe people got Viva Piñata out. They had even released a Viva Piñata party game that was kind of like a Mario Party clone. That game actually wasn't too bad, but off subject, I'm not talking about the party game. I'm talking about the mainline Viva Piñata series. Now, they made Viva Piñata and then they made Viva Piñata Trouble in Paradise. I think it would be proper if they made Viva Piñata 3. Not only would it be awesome that we get a new Viva Piñata game, but maybe they could capitalize on making the game available on xCloud so that maybe, you could play Viva Piñata from your tablet, and that would make it really easy to be able to access your garden and keep up with it. Now, I know we've already went through 10 wishes for E3, but I absolutely had to include this one, so here's a bonus, number 11. Next, we have another game published by Xbox on the original Xbox, and that is Kung Fu Chaos. Fun fact, this was a party game that was actually developed by Ninja Theory, which now is owned by Xbox, so this makes perfect sense. You have the publisher, Microsoft, all teamed up with the developer, once again, Ninja Theory. It makes perfect sense to bring back this Kung Fu party game to modern day. This is another Xbox exclusive that I really wish they would have made backwards compatible. I don't know if you guys have ever played this one. Let me know down in the comments below if you have. Now that's going to cover the 10 things I wish Xbox would announce at E3 2021. I even gave you an extra one, totaling up for 11. If you guys enjoyed some of these ideas, let me know down in the comments below. Again, I know it's not your typical list with Halo, Fable, Perfect Dark, games like that, but these are 10 things I actually wish that Xbox would do that really nobody's talking about. And again, keep in mind, as awesome as some of these wishes are, they're just wishes, and more than likely we're going to be disappointed not seeing any of these. So I think we'd be lucky to see even one or two of these things. Hopefully it's Banjo and Conker. Other than that, I'd like to give a huge thank you to all of my Patreon subscribers. We just hit 16 patrons. I'd like to give a special shout out to everybody in the biggest fan club, including TimG84, AOJ, Kegger101, Michael Banksa, and Purple Rain 6. As always, I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment and don't forget to like and subscribe.